Once upon a time, but believe me, this is no fairy story, somewhere in the middle of space, there was a small green planet called Earth. It was a truly beautiful place.
Hello, soldier.
Well, all right then, perhaps it wasn't that beautiful.
Ooh.
But remember, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Anyway, for millions of years, maybe even a few days longer, the planet was in great shape, perfectly balanced and in harmony with itself.
Who writes this stuff? Ooh.
Sadly, it was too good to last. The planet became infested with a terrible parasite, like dogs get fleas. It spread all over her body, causing her great discomfort and distress. Everywhere the parasites went, they produced a terrible acne of rubbish. They produced chemicals and sludge which poisoned her lifeblood, her rivers and her seas. They cut down her rainforests, changing her climate and starving her of oxygen. They produced smoke and toxic gases, polluting the air and turning the rain to acid. Some of the gases have made her atmosphere heat up, and she's running a bit of a temperature. What's more, some of the chemicals have made a hole in her ozone layer, exposing her lower regions to dangerous ultraviolet radiation. She's a bit worried that her polar caps will melt and drown her. Right now, she's feeling pretty sick. And the cause of all this trouble? Well, the cause of all this trouble is an assortment of warm-blooded bipeds known as humans. There are millions of them. And every single one causes damage. Through the ages, one particular group has caused a lot of problems. Humans call this group soldiers.
Okay, fair enough. Point taken. But let's face it, war is a messy business. There's bound to be loads of damage, especially these days. Still, we don't spend too much of our time fighting wars, do we? Mostly it's just training. But it's got to be realistic training, otherwise there's no point. Trouble is, realistic training can cause a lot of damage too. It can make a right mess of the ranges. If we want them to survive, we've got to start sorting ourselves out. We've really got to cut down the damage we do when we're training.
Wheel vehicles will use the available tracks to the north and drop into the...
Now this platoon have got the right idea, so let's see how they handle themselves. We might learn a thing or two.
Remember, there is a tumulus at grid 973461, and I want you to pay particular attention to that and give it a wide berth. Are there any questions?
No, sir.
No, sir.
Sir, we'll be able to dig in at the harbour area.
All training areas have got their own local orders, saying what you can and can't do. Mostly it's just common sense, but make sure you get a copy and read it.
Let's mount up.
Of course, a lot of the things that cause damage are the same on all the areas. I'm going to tell you about a few of the worst ones. First, driving. Let's see what Rick does. Driving like Rick can cause a lot of damage, so whatever your vehicle, whether it's got tracks or wheels, drive sensibly, like these blokes. Sure, you've got to practice cross-country driving, but anyone can smash round the range messing up the ground. That's easy. Skillful drivers do very little damage. They're careful. Take it easy near penned animals. Don't spook them. They may be a load of bullocks to you, but they're cash in hand to the farmer. Next, keep clear of things like burial mounds. The important ones are marked with star signs to warn you, but they can get a bit weather beaten, so watch out for them. And go round the mounds, please, not over them. In wheeled vehicles, stick to tracks as much as you can, and drive carefully so that you don't make ruts. Think ahead. If you need four-wheel drive, knock it in good time. At the bottom of the hill, not halfway up it. Keep away from banks and ditches so they don't get broken down. If you need to drive through crops, go in single file when you can. That'll limit the damage. Sometimes it's good tactics too. Bad track discipline could give away your position. When you have to cross a public road, use a proper crossing point. If there aren't any MPs around to control the traffic, remember to look both ways. If possible, stop and clear your mud off the road. But if you can't, report it to the damage control team and they'll clean it up for you. We've got to be very careful not to pollute any water on the ranges. So when it comes to crossing bridges and streams, use the bridges. Steer clear of marshes and boggy ground. They're important to wildlife and they can cause you a good deal of aggro. If you get bogged down, you're a sitting duck. Before you go storming into woodland, make sure you're allowed to be there. Some areas are fenced off and that means they're out of bounds to all vehicles. Be careful when you're parking close to trees so that you don't damage them. When it comes to camming up, use bungees for attaching the cam to the trees. Use plastic poles to help support it. If there aren't any with the vehicle, get pre-cut poles from the range stores before you set out. Leave the branches on the trees, where they belong. Don't be like Rick. Train green. The next big cause of damage on the ranges is digging, especially if you do it like Rick. On exercise, you should try to position your trenches tactically without harming the environment. You should keep away from trees if you can, and you must avoid historic sites. Remove the grass turfs carefully so that you can put them back again when you move on. Keep the topsoil separate so you can put that back in the right place too. The idea is that when you leave the site, it should look just the same as when you arrived. No one should be able to see you while you're there. and no one should be able to tell you've been there when you've gone. Again, it's good tactical sense. And while we're on the subject, mechanical digging. A mechanical shovel can do a lot more damage than a handheld one, so be careful. Make sure you know where all the cables are so that you don't dig them up. Check the range maps before you start. Don't be like Rick. Train green. Next on the list, POL, petrol, oil and lubricants. Now they can do a hell of a lot of damage. Can't they, Rick? And now, the sensible way. If you've got to refuel on the range, use the proper nozzle or funnel and don't let any fuel spill on the ground. Make sure you put the filler caps back securely as well. If you get an oil leak from a vehicle or a piece of machinery, put some absorbent granules in a tray and shove it underneath to catch the drips. Don't let the oil just splash onto the ground. You can leave your routine maintenance until you get back to camp. But if you have to do emergency repairs in the field, always work on a hard standing. Put all your waste oil, including cooking oil, into drums or cans and take it back to camp for disposal. Don't dump it in ditches and streams. If you spill oil or fuel accidentally, soak it up with granules as soon as you can, before it seeps into the ground. Bag up the used granules and take them back to camp too, and always report it. Don't be like Rick. Train green. Now for item number 4, noise, fire and smoke. Young Ricky's definitely in his element here. We all know there's bound to be a lot of noise during any realistic exercise, and we get loads of complaints about it from the locals. You can see their point of view. After all, they've got to live with it all the time. It's a tricky problem, but we've got to keep the noise levels down as best we can, especially around houses and animals, and especially at night. And no unnecessary noise, please. We don't want to upset the locals. We need them on our side. Sometimes exercise action results in small fires being started. If you see one, stop what you're doing and put it out as fast as you can. Use your boots and shovels. They'll usually do the trick. If you can't deal with it yourself, get help quickly. And what about smoke?
No.
Well, of course, it's essential for tactical movement, and there are times when you've got to use it. No problem. But some smoke is just not acceptable. Dirty vehicle exhaust, for instance. It's caused by poor maintenance. It's unprofessional, and it shouldn't happen. It annoys the locals, too.
Oh, Mr. Gold, knocked your gate over. It's not too much damage. We'll get the troops to put it back up for you.
We've all got to be PR men these days. So if you have an accident and do some damage, report it to your section commander straight away. That way the trouble can be sorted out before anyone gets too pissed off.
Okay, thanks very much.
Don't be like Rick. Train green. Now for something that could easily be stamped out on the ranges. Litter. At Endex, sort out all the rubbish from your personal packs. Crisp bags, sweet papers, bottles, all that sort of stuff. Some jokers have been known to bury it all on site, but it just gets dug up again by wild animals and it doesn't do them any good. So, bag it all up in black poly sacks and take them back to camp with you. Make sure you retrieve all the cables and wires you've laid out. If you leave them trailing about, animals might get trapped in them. And in any case, they give away your position. When you fill in your trenches and scrapes, put back the topsoil and turfs last. Tramp them down well. Give the roots a chance to get growing again.
Put all the spoil in. Get the turfs, lay the turfs out.
If you get caught short and you can't wait till you get back to camp, remember to take a shovel with you.
Tulloch, now go back and get your
Yeah, it's the one thing you are allowed to bury on site. Make sure it's a nice deep hole and fill it in again afterwards. Collect up everything that can be recycled, like brass cartridge cases and ammo boxes. It saves the army money and it's good conservation. As a last check, do a general sweep of the area, picking up any bits of rubbish that you've missed. Leave the site the way you'd like to find it, clean and tidy. Before you leave the range, wash down your vehicle so as you don't go spreading mud around the public roads. Use the proper washdown points where the water can be cleaned and recycled and won't run off into local streams. When you eventually get back to camp, put all your rubbish and waste materials in the proper skips and tanks so that they can be disposed of correctly. Take empty fuel cans back to the QM store for cleaning and refill. For everyone's sake, try and keep the place neat and tidy. Don't be like Rick. Train green. And so to our final topic, conservation. Not something young Ricky cares about too much. Despite Rick, the Army's got a good record for conservation on the training areas. There's loads of wildlife out there. Animals, plants, insects and birds. And some of them are quite rare. They've got as much right to be there as you have. So leave them alone. And keep away from historic sites too. If you go on adventurous training or training on private land, be considerate. Follow the country code. Close gates behind you. Use stiles rather than climbing over walls or pushing through fences. Leave the farm animals in peace. Stick to tracks and paths whenever you can. And where it says keep out, keep out.
Which clone are we going to do?
When it comes to cooking, use gas stoves or hexamine blocks rather than lighting fires. Fires in the countryside can be really dangerous.
We got permission to abseil there?
Yeah, we've got permission.
Better check Jeff knows where we're going.
Stay out of farm buildings and don't use them as garages for your vehicles either.
You know we're off to the yacht tomorrow?
Yeah, that's no problem.
If you smoke, watch what you do with your fag ends. Make sure you put them out properly. Don't just chuck them away. Respect the rights of others in the countryside and they will respect yours. And remember, the army depends on public support.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
So be a good neighbour. Leave the countryside the way you'd like to find it. Don't be like Rick. Train green.
It pays to train green. The environment is the soldier's friend. It provides you with cover. It provides you with shelter. It provides you with water, with all the means to survive. Look after it, and the environment will look after you. It's just common sense. So get the green habit and apply the principles wherever you train, whether on the plains of Central Europe, the tropical jungles of Belize, the snowy wastes of Norway, the dry hills of Cyprus, the windswept Falklands, or the vast prairies of Canada. It's one world, and we are all a part of it. We all make an impact. We are all responsible. Each one of us must do his bit to protect poor old Mother Earth from further damage. She's all we've got. So, what about a happy ending then? Well, as I said before, this is no fairy story. It's serious business. There isn't an easy answer. If you want a happy ending, it's up to you. Train green.